Dayton while we're making a transition. When I handed out all of the goodies for Valentine's Day, there was also a piece of paper on there, and this is a quote from John Maxwell, who, if any of you know him, is a world-famous trainer in leadership, and his quote was, "The glue that holds a team together is unity of purpose." And so I took the opportunity to use part of that as a comment, because today I think that if there's any time that we showed a board that we were unified on purpose today, we did it. So thank you, Mr. Maxwell. I'm sure he's listening to our presentation today and will say, wow, he did something right. Dr. Vosa.
Thank you. Board members, our next item is the sales tax update. As you may recall, the community supported us in a half-cent sales tax. We partnered with the county and cities, and we wanted to give the board an update on how that's going from both a financial standpoint and then a planning standpoint. So I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Fenoy, our Chief Operating Officer, Wanda Paul, and Mike Burke.
Good afternoon, Chairman Shaw, Vice Chairwoman Robinson, and the rest of the board. At this time, Ms. Paul will be presenting our sales tax referendum projects and new construction update. Just so the team will know, Ms. Paul hit the ground running and has been doing a Herculean job getting the team galvanized to hit the green light to move the projects forward. Dr. Vosa gave us a clear edict that we had to start immediately, and we started that work. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Paul.
Thank you, Chairman Shaw, Vice Chair Robinson, Superintendent Vosa. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be in Palm Beach. And I'll probably say that every time I come to the table. First of all, I want to thank my team for bringing me on board really quickly.
Can you move your mics a little closer?
I have an amazing team. That's what I wanted to say. And unlike Mr. Burke's presentation, mine is a happy presentation. So the first slide kind of details the objectives of this presentation. I'm sure we're going to have many more as we go forward over the next 10 years. I wanted to point out some highlights, the introduction of our program management firm, our project prioritization and methodology for choosing which project is first, our project plan, challenges and opportunities, and then Mr. Burke will go into transportation and technology projects and provide you with an update on that. So to recap, the Palm Beach County voters approved $1.3 billion sales tax referendum over the next 10 years. The bulk of this money goes to deferred maintenance. So even though new construction is great and wonderful, really the heavy lift is bringing our schools up to date. Our program management firm is AECOM, which is a fully integrated infrastructure firm. I want to introduce John Doherty there, and he is the lead for AECOM. Also, I want to introduce Dave Dolan. He is our deputy chief, new hire from the County of Palm Beach, and we're very happy to have him aboard. So as you can see, AECOM is fully capable of giving us anything we need at any time. And so you'll see where they'll come in on projects and they'll fade away. And so what that means is during the summer where we're doing our heavy lifts, we'll have more people on staff from AECOM. During the school year where we're working after hours or on weekends, we'll have less. So we're organized for success. As you can see, our school district will take the lead. We'll make all the project planning decisions, design, procurement, construction with our full-time permanent staff. And AECOM provides us with a professional expert advice on recommendations, and they keep us informed on decisions that are happening across the state of Florida, as well as providing supplemental staff, as I mentioned before, during our peak periods. Project prioritization methodology, basically we're looking at the FCA, and we have organized the deferred maintenance to take care of those needs that are most critical at our schools. So again, most of this work, the majority of it, is in deferred maintenance. These are some examples of our projects that we have planned. We have this year, we'll have $350 million of projects started. So that's a very aggressive timeline, but I think we can meet it. And as you can see, we have a lot of things going. The transportation projects are really important for us, and so it's a great opportunity. If ever you need an update on a particular school, you can go to the Referendum website, and now you can see where a project is completed or in process or when that project is supposed to start. It's highlighted in green. And again, these are some of the projects we've completed. Now, these projects are in phases. So we've done the low-hanging fruit stuff first on some of these projects, and then we'll get into the summer for the more complicated projects coming up this summer. And as you can see, these are some of the projects that are in progress this summer. We're going to focus on restrooms and interior classroom painting and that sort of stuff. So these are renovations of the restrooms. Those start the summer of 2018. And again, these are the projects we have in planning. And as you can see, this work starts the summer of 2019. One of the things that we've done is we've moved the safety inspection citation problems that we've had backlog for many years. We've moved those forward, and we're going to try, our attempt is, and our goal is to complete those projects this summer. So all the CSR violations that we've had in the past, we're going to try to bring them up to date this summer. And again, these are some other projects in the planning phase. So what you'll see is that we'll have overlapping projects, and again, that's meant so that we can make sure that we can get the work done and not disrupt the classroom learning. Now, this is what most people are interested in. I'm sorry, how did I go back? New schools. And so these are the schools that we have in planning, as you can tell, and some of you are intimately aware of what's happening with these schools. The 05C school, which is in Boca, the city of Boca has been so kind as to convey some property to us for Don Estridge, so that will definitely help us move that forward. And again, you can see the other schools that are in process.
Just for clarity, that is, when you say Don Estridge, it's on the Don Estridge site?
Yes, sir.
It's
yes,
not
sir.
for Don
No,
Estridge.
it's not for Don Estridge. It's on the site. And these are the school modernizations that we have pending, awards pending, and then also in planning. Additions and remodeling, you can see the expanse of those projects. Transportation sites, these are particularly important. We have a lot of needs on the transportation side, and so we had our first transportation charrette last Friday to identify exactly what the needs are, and then also to figure out the best formula, not only for where we need the buses, but how we can make it easier on our bus mechanics and so forth to give them the tools that they need to replace air conditioners and that sort of thing. So it was a very enlightening experience to go through that. And then the great challenge, again, you know, we have to reduce the size of our buildings because of the mandate of, you know, cost per student station. And so this will be a significant emotional event for Palm Beach because we've built our schools really. I wasn't here, so I can't take credit for that. We have some of the most gorgeous schools, but they're kind of big. And so what the state has done is come in and mandated, you know, that we reduce the size of our buildings. And so this is kind of the effect. You can see Orange County, and then you can see what we would have to take away. So as I said before, that's a significant emotional event and will be for our principals and the community. So I think it's important that my team and we socialize that and help them understand what that means.
May I just add one comment there? As we begin thinking about this and looking at this, these charrettes that typically include district officers or officials?
Yes, we have one on the educational specifications coming up.
Can we make sure we have a teacher's voice there, whether it's an elected person from their union or a current classroom teacher?
Absolutely, yes, sir. And then these are some of the process improvement examples that I think we need to focus on. We need to make sure that we have a standardized workflow. We need to optimize the design of our buildings, a leverage procurement that creates cost efficiencies throughout, and then enhanced cost management. One of the things that we definitely need to come out of here is just out of this referendum is a better way, an improved way to do business. That helps our contractors. That keeps the competition at a high level so that we will have people to build our schools and so forth. And it's just being fiscally responsible. And so that is our goal, to come out with a documented process so that we can pass on to the next generation of leaders that come in behind us. Again, design contract awards, this is just an example that we feel will enhance transparency and decision making. One thing I want to say too, in terms of the new construction, and all of that is dependent on DOE approval. We have already submitted a ed plant survey, and we are working with DOE to try to get all of our wants and needs approved by DOE. And now I'll turn it over to Mike Burke.
Thanks. As Ms. Paul said, the bulk of the money, of the $1.3 billion in sales tax dollars over the next 10 years, over $1 billion is deferred maintenance and construction work. We did have a couple other components, though. We talked about keeping our fleet up to date, primarily our bus fleet, but also our maintenance and school police cars. And that, the sales tax, the penny is hard at work. We've already ordered 157 school buses. We may recall we were trying to get back to basically replacing 10% of the fleet per year, roughly 800 buses, so you'd be buying about 80 buses a year. So we're on track there. We've received 127 of them, and 30 should be arriving shortly, and we're getting ready to order another batch for next year. We've got about 20 new police cars on the way and 46 maintenance vehicles. And I've been working with Dr. Fenoy and our procurement team as we now are in a position where we can actually buy support vehicles again. We are looking at an opportunity maybe to lease vehicles rather than purchase, and as part of that lease have the maintenance needs taken care of, and hopefully lower the total cost of ownership. We have older vehicles, 20 years old, gas-guzzling vehicles, and we're working to see, there's scenarios where you can actually have a newer vehicle, save on maintenance, save on gas, and, hopefully be able to kind of kickstart our new fleet. The technology was the other big piece. We had over $100 million in classroom technology. Part of that is the audio enhancement systems in our schools. A lot of them were, maybe the microphone was broken or a piece of the equipment was broken. The ed technology team is busy right now making sure that every classroom is functional again through replacing the microphone or what have you. So they've been through 47 schools. They've got another 50 scheduled, and they hope to have them all done by the end of this year, which is they'll be moving pretty quick. We also just recently, we're getting the evaluations actually started today on an RFP for the interactive flat panels. These are the big, 65, 75-inch iPads, basically, that we would be putting in some of our classrooms. So that bid's underway. We'll be bringing a contract to the board in the next couple months, hopefully, and then that would allow us to roll those out over the next 2 to 3 years. There's a lot of back-end infrastructure work that's going on. People may not see it, but it's helping with our network and our bandwidth and everything else. We're leveraging the sales tax money and our federal E-rate dollars to carry out a lot of this work. So we're replacing servers. We've gone through the middle schools and replaced all their servers. The wireless access points, you guys probably remember when we went wireless in our schools, it was a big deal. All those thousands of access points need to be replaced. And the technology continues to improve. So we're working through all of our high schools this year, and the students and faculty and everyone they're noticing the improvement as we get through each school. We'll finish the middle schools next year, along with about 30 elementary schools, and then the rest of the elementary probably in the next 2 or 3 years. And our networks are also continuing to be enhanced. There's a few steps going on related to capital, budget, and sales tax and all that Dr. Fenoy and I and Ms. Paul all work closely together on, and we just want to give the board a heads up. You may recall we've talked a few times about P3s or private-public partnerships. We're trying to look at a version of a P3. I've been calling it P3 Lite that would really meet our needs. P3s can be everything from financing to the ongoing maintenance to just leasing a school indefinitely. We're interested, what we'd like to try to accomplish is to perhaps have, in an effort to fast-track a new school, and hopefully build it cheaper and stretch our student station cost limits to the maximum. We'd like to kind of challenge the private sector to do that for us. We've been working with Ms. Rico and her team and also some outside counsel to develop, hopefully, an RFP to compete that type of work. It's new ground for us, so we want to make sure we get the procurement and purchasing and all that squared away, and that the district's fully protected. So that's going on. As we are ramping up our construction program again, and with the Construction Oversight Committee, the board recently did go through some policy changes to help, maybe revisit some of the, or look at some of the pain points, where when we do projects internally, what slows us down? Is there authority that needs to be revisited on change orders, or maybe the way we contract with our vendors when we do see them at risk? I've heard, we try to protect the district so much on every aspect of the project that it makes it difficult for a builder, and what that results in is then they have to protect themselves. And if you say, look, we're not going to let you move money from roofing to plumbing or to the paving, when we take away their flexibility, we end up paying more. So we feel like there's still some opportunities to revisit our policies, and we would, of course, work with Cork on that, and with Dr. Fenoy and Ms. Paul's team. Ms. McQuinn, I think, has got a question.
Mrs. McQuinn, and then Mrs. Andrews, and Mrs. Whitfield.
Just a statement. Ms. Brill is our board's representative on the ISOC. I sat in on a meeting this past week, and one of the committee members from, I don't remember, well, obviously was not on staff, asked Ms. Paul about here's what I'm going to do. She can take some projects out of order in terms of deferred maintenance if there's a catastrophic situation in a school that needs to be dealt with. And so it is a moving target in that respect, because then they can talk about, well, what's most cost effective for us to just go ahead and plug things in there. I obviously, it was a question from the committee, and I found it very informational sharing.
So, Mrs. Whitfield, we'll let you take your question now, since it's getting close to that magic hour.
Thank you. I was actually thinking as soon as I asked I would leave. Thank you so much. I just wanted to make a comment that, Ms. Paul, having you in this position makes me sleep well at night. You have done such a great job, and I am very, very impressed with how quickly you've done it. And I just wanted to say publicly, thank you so much. It's a really big undertaking what you're doing, and I think you're doing a great job, and I have no worries about the work that you're doing, so that makes me feel really good. The other thing I wanted to just make a quick mention about is the public-private partnerships that you've talked about, Mr. Burke. This is something that has taken me a long time to kind of get my head around and my heart around to see if this is something we can do, but I think the one thing it does say about our district is our willingness to innovate and to look for opportunities to save money in every way that we possibly can, that we can best serve our students. So I just want to thank you for making this opportunity available to our community, and I would ask that our community come out and really make this effort to help us here, because I think that we're going to do what we can to make it possible, but we're going to need community support to be able to make this happen. We do need new schools. Ms. Brill will probably mention that in her comments. And I'm looking forward to hopefully being there to help this happen. So thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm leaving.
Mr. Barbie and Mrs. Brill, Mrs. Andrews. Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. So actually, I wasn't going to mention the schools. I was going to say, though, that, as a member of the committee, I've been enormously impressed with the number of attendees, the work that's going on, the communication level. And I know that all of us, when we're out in our communities, are hearing kudos from the parents who go up to the schools, who see some of the work that's going on, who know how responsive we've been. I do have a question that's related, and I did submit it on board questions, but for Dr. Fenoy, a memo went out regarding 10 schools that are going to close this summer because of the work that's going to be going on. My concern is that, you know, again, summer's around the corner, and some of these schools have summer camp programs, extended school year, and other activities that go on. How quickly are we going to be informing the families, and are we making accommodations where there perhaps was a summer school program to shift the children to another school? And also the summer camp. I mean, as a single mom, I relied on those summer camp programs that we have. So what is our plan of action to help the community through those 10 closures?
Right now, we're in the process of scheduling a meeting with the academic team, because ultimately the communication must come from the principal. Ms. Paul and her team have now made the decision on what is going to happen. So now the next meeting will be, these are the do's and don'ts of what's going to happen. And so the academic team is systematically making sure that the principals understand what all of this means. Because once we shut it down, there won't be coming in and out. Because it just costs us too much money to deal with some of the environmental issues. So we are, in the next week or so, we will have those meetings and let the principals know what exactly will be happening. And they will meet their project managers, so the people that the principal will be in touch with during the entire process. So they'll be able to know timelines and what work is happening.
Just as a follow-up, I think, though, and I appreciate that part of it, but it's the human piece of the students that, and I know we have to get that formulated, but to the superintendent, I hope that the board can find out what the plan is to accommodate those students that would have been there.
We're not going to shut any programs down. We've already been talking about an academic cabinet for weeks. It's really just about placement. So if a school is going to have extended school year at school A, we'll move it to the next closest school, which we do every year anyway. We never do summer school and summer camps.
But if we have a transportation, I don't know if some of the students get transportation, we'll make sure it's a smooth transition and work with informing families.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my entire division is part of the process.
Right. Mr. Barberry, Mrs. Andrews.
Yep. I want to echo what Mrs. Whitfield said. I remembered her name this time. What she said about Ms. Paul. I mean, my district has been very vocal, and you know things are going on there, and you've been super. I mean, it's like you're available anytime I call. You give me updates. You know, Dr. Vosa, she's super. I'm glad you brought her here. And too bad you're leaving, because you won't get to see how much super she gets. And then a question for Mr. Burke. Obviously, I want us to get as many buses as we need to get to replace faulty buses, but you indicated we're replacing about 10% of the fleet a year. We have 915 buses based on the last information I had. So we're getting 90 new buses a year. Do we really have 90 old buses that we need to get rid of each year, or are we just replacing buses because we have money to replace buses? I'm just concerned that, you know, I see them on the salvage reports. They have some miles on them, and I understand we get rid of the ones that break down constantly, but do we really have 90 buses a year that we have to get rid of, or are we just increasing the size of the fleet?
Mr. Barberry, we absolutely have 90-plus buses that we need to get rid of every year. What's actually happened, I think, during the recession, we got to a point where we cannibalized everything that we had. So for the first 6 months that we sent the reports to you, those buses, some of them didn't have anything. They didn't have engines. They were just shells. So now we're at a point where some of the buses have met the board policy as it relates to being put off the list, but we are keeping as many as we can. Now, we also have to understand we have a lot of buses that the schools use as activity buses as well. And so there's this whole process, but we are definitely making sure I won't allow anything to come to you that does not meet the criteria. And even if it does meet the criteria and it's still usable, we will use those buses.
Okay. The other piece I want to add, we have a lot of little groups asking us, and we're going to have to talk about this and maybe bring a policy back to the board. We'll say, you know, we typically will go to the marketplace and say, you know, auction these buses off. Sometimes they may go for $500, sometimes they may go for $5,000, depending on their condition. But we do periodically have time where cities will say, can we get one of those buses? And they're partners of ours, which means they're our kids, they're our community, and we don't have an ability to do that right now. So I think we need to come back to you and ask you all. I'll give you an example. The Glades, for example. All three of those cities have asked us, when you have a bus that still works but maybe not meets your criteria because it has to drive from, you know, the Glades back to central location, they'd be willing to take a chance on it. We have no way to help them. So we're going to have to come back with you on that.
Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you, and I must say too, Ms. Paul, you've been working closely with me over the last few months. The Canal Point roof situation you handled, it was an emergency, and you moved it, and you're working closely on the West Tech pieces, so I do appreciate you and your team getting right on it. But I wanted to ask a question about the transportation site for West Central. I know that something happened with the county recently. Can you give me an update of what's going on with that site?
Yes, at this time, it has been approved to be moved forward. However, as I understand it, it has to go through a series of meetings over the next several months for the final approval. So right now we have the preliminary approval to begin our design process. But again, there are still certain phases of the zoning that still must be discussed at the county office multiple times over the next couple of months.
And also the Royal Palm facility site, the land that we purchased back there, what's happening with that?
But right now, it's still in holding. So Ms. Paul has brought in a team of experts with AECOM to help us look at the totality of our 6 facilities to really think differently. So there's a real interesting reality. I got back from Cocoa Beach taking my son to Kennedy Space Center this weekend, and the GPS took me through the North Lake, West Lake, and Arden areas. That place is going to be humongous. And so we have to think, how are we going to get buses out there 10, 15 years from now when that's fully developed? And so there's a lot of discussion we're trying to figure out, because part of our tension is our bus drivers have to be able to get to work. So if they don't live in those communities, what does their commute look like as well? So we're looking at the whole concept and trying to think differently. Maybe we go to just some ideas. These are not finalized. Maybe we go to a centralized location in terms of maintenance. Maybe we make a big centralized maintenance facility, because another reality is our workforce is different. So I may only have 2 master mechanics in the entire district, maybe one out west and one south. Well, I need to get them in one location so that we can send all transmissions to the 2 men or women that can actually do that work best. So we're really, Ms. Paul just had our first meeting around this last week. But there's a lot of work to be done. And at the end of the day, we don't necessarily have unlimited resources. Right now, I think, Mr. Burke, we have close to $40 million, if that, for all 6 facilities, and well, potentially 7. So there's a lot of design work going forward, and we need to have a lot of help as it relates to professionals coming in and really looking at the big picture. I think another piece that I would make sure the board is very clear about is our transportation is stressed because we've done such a good job with choice. So you may have kids on one child on a bus coming from the Glades all the way to the coast. You know, so as you think about that reality, as we get bigger and we expand, the fleet has to grow with that, coupled with the fact that we need workers to man the buses in addition to everything else. So it's a lot of tension, but a lot of good thinking going around this work.
Okay, I just was following up a little bit because hopefully we're working well with the Village of Royal Palm Beach and that site there. I see quite a few buses parked at Royal Palm High School, so I'm just wondering, maybe it can be a side conversation you can have with me later.
No, it's not a side. You mentioned that to me last week. Those buses have been moved as of today.
Okay.
So they have now, and the issue was we actually don't have the space at Royal Palm, so we actually moved some of them to East today. Yes, ma'am.
And a couple more, Mr. Shaw. The police cars that we've actually ordered, there were some concerns from the officers about the sizes of those vehicles. Has that process been taken care of? Is everybody pretty clear on what's happened? Some of the officers had indicated to me that some of those cars were really tiny, so there were some concerns in the past. Did that get taken care of?
So we're using the standard vehicle. We're not purchasing the larger SUV. So you do have some folks who wanted us to do that. We also have to think about sort of want versus need and how far we can stretch it. I'd love to be able to say every one of the officers gets exactly what they want, but we're going to have to do a blended version of that. We just can't afford to do the full-size SUVs.
Okay. I just know it was brought to my attention, and now that you're purchasing, I want to make sure that it was clear that there are questions have been answered.
In that regard. So, Mr. Burke, what we're really thinking about with this enterprise fleet management system, if we are able to go there, instead of us owning vehicles moving forward, we would have a full-on lease project where enterprise would then allow us to basically double our fleet at the same cost over time, so that we actually maybe could get the SUVs if we're leasing it, because at a certain point in time, The company then says this vehicle can be sold. The profit from that vehicle then be given back to the district, and then we just get a new lease right after that. And so we would have a continuous cycle of new vehicles coming in, and all maintenance and fuel will be taken care of by the company. So we are exploring it full on right now, and Mr. Burke and myself and Leanne are definitely excited and encouraged by this possibility.
Well, and lastly, I think I had to answer early. Now, Wellington Landings will be getting their track and field this summer.
Oh, let's see that.
They will have a track and field.
Okay. Soon?
I'll get with you offline. There are some things we have to do
Okay.
for that, but we are working on it, haven't forgotten it. So I'll call you.
Thank you.
Dr. Robinson and Mr. Barbieri.
So I want to add my thanks to, I think that actually all three of you have been outstanding in terms of being responsive to concerns. And I won't list them I'll just keep many of them to myself, and some of them are works in progress, but I just appreciate the way that you like really listen to the customers and not just the system. So a few questions and comments. So as we look at remodeling these transportation facilities, can we keep in mind something for the health of the workers at those facilities? Because if they're, I think I had this conversation with Dr. Fanoy, I don't remember who I had it with, but that they're sitting there all day. So wouldn't it be nice if there were, was like basically like a little gym, or maybe not so little, but some kind of exercise equipment, so that their health, they can work on their health concerns while at work, right? And we might be able to partner with Quantum or some other entities who might be able to assist with that financially. But as you know, it's a need. I actually just met with the T. Leroy Jefferson Medical Society at one of the facilities again, and they're actually applying for another grant to help us address the health concerns for our bus drivers. So moving on, the public-private partnerships. Will we, if we were to build schools using the Triple P, do they still have to meet all the SREF requirements?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Then, and is there a minimum expectation for technology in the classrooms? Like, is there a list?
So do you mean with the public-private partnership or what we're doing with our sales tax?
Okay, if we build schools using a public-private partnership, can we, like charter schools don't have to follow the SREF rules, can we build without following SREF rules?
So what we'll need to do is we go to the marketplace and say, this is what we want. This is the classroom we expect. This is the technology, right? Those are our requirements, if you will. That's what
your
we would call them.
educational specifications. for
Right, so those
classroom.
specifications will be woven into that.
Right.
And so that they'll look and feel a lot like what we've done in other places. Because
Okay.
we want to make sure from an equity standpoint, that's why that sales tax was so important, that those big interactive projectors and other things will be in every classroom, not just some.
Okay, I think you just switched on me. So I was talking about the building itself. So I think I got the answer. We still have to follow all the rules.
Yes.
I mean, I shouldn't even say it that way, but so SREF, because charters don't have to follow the SREF. They could build buildings that look like medical office buildings, right? But
Yeah,
we have to
just-
follow SREF.
We do if we're going to own the facility.
Okay, even if we do a public-private partnership, even if it's a long-term lease, we still have to follow.
The lease is where it gets different. If we were comfortable leasing the site, we may not have to follow SREF.
Legal.
Ms. Rico.
Thank you. So one of the threshold questions that we're exploring right now with expert counsel is to identify some of those threshold questions. So we think that we will have certain navigational opportunities with respect to regulatory compliance, but we want to fully define that for you as we proceed with the process, because those are some threshold questions. So they're good questions, but we don't have the full research and answer done on how all that's going to fall out.
Okay, thank you. Then back to the technology, is there a list of what we should see when we visit classrooms? Whether it's new or old, there's a list of technology items that we should see? Does that exist?
I think there's a goal, but we had talked about the bid that we're evaluating now for interactive panels is for 11,000 potentially if we decide to purchase that many. But so that potentially could go in every classroom. But the audio enhancement is throughout the whole district. And I don't want to step on toes here too much because we have experts in this area with Mark Howard and Gary Weinheimer. I know the need we still have is devices, and Mr. Howard and I just spoke yesterday about that. We'd like to see more devices in the kids' hands, and you cannot use the sales tax money for devices. So I'm not sure, Dave, if I can answer your question. Would we fully spec'd out what the ideal scenario is? Probably need to research that and get back to you.
So, Dr. Robinson, we'll have staff members write up a one-pager to let you know what we're thinking about in that area and what that might look like.
Okay, that'd be good, because then when we're falling short, say if it's devices, then we need to contact our partners to see if they can help us with those specific things. And so my last, two things. So the one baby on the bus coming from the Glades to a program, shouldn't they be in a car? Like, can we right-size transportation? No, I'm serious.
So that is a huge tension point for us as it relates to private transportation. It is that too is an expensive proposition. I think just the reality of, moving forward, the choice program, figuring out ways to replicate programs in regions will actually be a better decision point than moving kids across county. But
there's all kinds of risk factors in that. I mean, because we've heard folks say, well, I mean, wouldn't it be cheaper to have those small number of kids take Uber and we just pay for that? And so there's a lot of moving parts around safety and risk that makes it very difficult for us. And there's a reason why the buses weigh 80,000 pounds. It's to keep kids safe.
Okay. I think I'll explore that more offline. Then, and then my last comment, and it's a request, and it's a goal, a dream, is that as we go about our activities, having conversations with other governmental agencies, that we can bring back the idea of making this a wireless county. That existed some years ago, 12 years ago or something, and they talked about all the whatever, I don't know that technology, and the only place that I know that we got it was in Pleasant City. But if we could just revive that dream of saying that our communities work together so that we have wireless throughout the county, because the kids, I mean, we're dependent on it now. And we're given homework assignments that require that they access the internet, and we know it's a digital divide issue. So if we can just revive that dream as we go, I know it won't happen rapidly, and maybe we can identify some of the people that were part of the initiative before to see where they, other than money, where the brick walls were. Thank you.
Mr. Barbieri.
Yeah, Ms. Shaw, this is unrelated. I just wanted to, we should probably make a statement that, Superintendent Runcie just announced that there are numerous fatalities at Stoneman Douglas High School. Students are dead. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of those students just to our south. So.
All right. So if we can, this may be an appropriate time for just a moment of silence, and go with that. So, thank you. Mr. Burke, does that conclude?
Just add one more comment real quickly.
Okay, Mrs. Andrews has a question.
I'm sorry.
Just a quickie on the West Tech campus modification grant and the West Tech campus modifications. Just clarify that. I think I know what you mean, but just for my clarification.
Okay, so the grant is for the I'll get it. The grant is for the 1.4 that came from the state. The modification is the building, the new building. And again, we're waiting on our Department of Ed to give us permission. They will tell us what we can remove or tear down from that campus and what we have to keep. And so once we get that decision, then we'll move forward.
When are we anticipating that report, and what is that report called again?
It's The Ed Plant Survey, the Ed Plant Survey. And our hope is that we have been communicating back and forth with them as they ask questions, we provide answers. So our expectation is to hopefully get it between March and April, and that would be good for us. And then if they give us permission of all of our asks, then that allows us to continue to plan and move forward with what we've already communicated.
Chairman Shaw, the last point we wanted to just mention was we do have an internal team, kind of cross-functional team, working on some strategic facility planning items. We envision having a workshop in May. You may recall we did that last year. We're just looking for opportunities where we have underutilized facilities, or if we have an opportunity maybe to expand a choice program, or maybe plug in a K-8 somewhere in the community. Those type of ideas get vetted through this group, and then the ones that seem to be viable, we bring to the superintendent and into the board. But at this time, we're just kind of brainstorming and vetting a host of proposals. And then my last request would be just remember the sales tax is a 10-year sales tax. So even things like the classroom technology and all that, this is a working process. You know, it's a money, we don't have it all today, so this work is going to be taking place for a while. And I just want people to kind of manage expectations that it won't happen all overnight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.
In other words, don't change the schedule.
I
So-
just have
so
to be a
basically
downer at every workshop I'm a part of.
So it's not like the little shows we watch at home. Within half hour, the house is completely redone and everybody's happy. All right, thank you, Mr. Burke, Mrs. Paul, and Dr. Fenoy. Our next item is youth court.